All right. Cool. Well, thanks for having us again. And I guess when we talk about strength training for skiing, um, I always thought of it as doing it only for the performance aspect and trying to do strength to be faster at skiing. And I think that's something that through the years of racing and having some influence from Jess, like I learned that strength is equally important for injury prevention and kind of training health as much as for the racing performance. Um, so you can probably speak more to the like that's how we probably should break it down maybe in this discussion is like strength for like ski speed and then strength for injury prevention.
Yeah, because obviously there's a lot of things you can do in the gym. Like what we're doing in the gym is trying to like strengthen muscles we're using on skis, do like specific movements that mimic skiing. And that's all great because you can really improve your performance with it. And I don't know any elite skiers that wouldn't do probably at least two good strength sessions in the gym per week. Plus, maybe like I know people that will do core on top of that, maybe a couple more times a week. So it is super important for performance. You're not going to find an elite skier that doesn't do strength training. But I think, even the older both Dave and I have gotten, the more we've kind of dealt with injuries and things. And so I have shifted a little bit thinking more about the injury prevention side. And then even looking back on some of the ways we've lifted in the past, and maybe things that you can get away with when you're younger, but it catches up with you and you can kind of get injuries from that stuff. So there's two sides to it. But I think if we start off talking kind of from the performance perspective, I think, twice a week in the gym. Something that we think is pretty important is trying to stack the strength workouts and do them on similar days to your more like intent, like your interval days in intensity, just because that's making those days harder. And then you're taking that opportunity afterwards to kind of recover. So instead of doing like intervals and then strength and then intervals again, where you're constantly kind of going hard, because I think strength training can be really hard on the body. You're giving yourself like a rest afterwards and you're allowing your tissues to recover. So that's really important as well. So that's kind of how we've structured it in the past.
Yeah, and I think that works because like as skiers, our our goal isn't to maximize the strength session above everything else, but so that's why like at least basically in every program we've been in, we'll do intensity and strength on the same day, and then you can follow that by 1 or 2 days of easy distance training and actually recover versus the yeah like Jess said, like if you do intervals Monday strength Tuesday then like one easy day and then repeat, it's like more days that are medium hard than like the hard easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Not saying that's the only way to
that's
do it, but
yeah. So that seems
yeah.
like a common timing that they do. Like you'll see it on World Cup that they'll do strength Sunday night even after racing Saturday, Sunday, then do strength. So then that allows Monday, Tuesday, even Wednesday to be like easy distance and really recover from the weekend. But you still squeeze in your strength set that you want to get each week.
Yeah, and important to keep consistency with strength too, because the thing is, I think sometimes we think, oh, I don't want to do strength like around an important race or something, because you don't want to get sore. But I mean, half the problem there is that you're not being consistent with it. If you're actually doing strength training throughout the year, then it shouldn't make you crazy sore. You should be able to tolerate it. So I think a lot of times through the season, we'll see like, the racing season, you'll see people sort of back off the strength, which I think is good. I think you can go into like more of a maintenance phase, but like still trying to get in there. I know it's harder when you're traveling, you're on the road. It's hard to find access to gyms. But I think teams we've been on the World Cup, like just getting in there for like 2 sessions a week, where even if you're just doing like some basic movements and core, like you're not lifting as hard as you can if you're racing. But trying to maintain that goes a long way, because then you're just going up and down, getting sore and like making things kind of a disaster. So like keep consistency with it.
So Jess, you mentioned kind of something about like a phase or like a maintenance phase throughout the winter, which is I think pretty typical because everyone's racing and busy. Wondering if either of you could just touch on maybe briefly kind of like the different phases or blocks of strength one might do throughout the year. Like starting in the spring, what do I focus on going from the spring to the summer? into the fall, into the racing season, where maybe I'm doing a little bit more maintenance.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think starting out like sort of in the springtime, like with more of the muscular endurance phase, where you're maybe doing a little like lower weight, higher repetition type stuff, and then progressing through. I think we've always kind of aimed to get towards that power phase where you're doing like quick movements, heavy lifting, and quick movements more like as you're going into the race season, and then backing back down to like a maintenance phase, which again would maybe be like higher rep type stuff. But I think the biggest thing is like trying to progress through stuff, because a lot of times what happens is you go into the spring and then it's like day one you're trying to lift really heavy, and so my biggest focus is like on progressing that stuff more than anything, and then as you're approaching the race season, maybe adding in more of the plyometric type movements, just because you're getting closer to the race season and you want that quickness and like max power. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think a lot of times you would cycle through at least like one, 2 or 3 times with like kind of the heavy lifting, like do the base building, and then like by July you could do a heavy phase of power, and then circle back to like base building, and then like September heavy lifting, and end of October heavy lifting again before a maintenance phase through the winter. Um, and then I even during the racing season, I think we did go through phases like around Christmas or something. If you had a little break in the race schedule, where I would return back to like lower reps, heavier lifts, and in a way that I think when I'm training higher volumes, I in a way I feel like it's less fatiguing to do like heavy lifts and less reps versus like 3 sets of 10 or something like that. Maybe actually makes me more tired. Um, and I think at least sometimes that like if you kind of feel like you're a little bit in a rut, I think sometimes heavy lifting actually makes me feel kind of like fresh and awake. So I would mix that in, and usually it didn't make me sore because of the consistency. Like I was always doing the motion, so it wasn't like a new motion. So I wouldn't necessarily just get sore because I was lifting heavier. Um,
So would you stick with similar exercises like throughout the season, or you do some variety?
a lot. I think there's pretty good variety, and like I think there's some progression of like like getting strong, like two-footed exercises, getting strong, pushing the weight in that, and then mixing it up where like reduce the weight but go to single foot. So you're working on like single leg stability, and cycling through that because like maybe you're not generating as much strength and power on the single leg exercise, but you're getting other benefits and gains by working that single leg stability, and then circling back to like two-footed stuff and lifting heavier. Um,
Yeah.
so we had I think quite a lot of variety.
We definitely had like I mean, at least I always had exercises I would do year round for
Yeah.
sure.
Like pull-ups,
Yeah.
dips.
I think the upper body stuff, like the core things, like pull-ups and dips are huge. They go a long way. So
Yeah.
we were always doing that kind of stuff, but maybe switching up lower body stuff a little more.
Yeah. And then some stuff just for like range of motion.
Mhm.
That was probably more the emphasis on like good body balance and like posture and injury prevention would be like some of the like lighter weight range of motion type balance, and the mix of those things were like pull ups, dips, split squats, bench press, like the like lying row, like kind of that. I didn't stray away from that hardly ever for the
Mhm.
most part. Maybe do a variation of it, like instead of dips, do like chair dips versus a dip bar, stuff like that. But that was
I have a question for you for injury prevention, especially for the younger athletes, what they say not to use any weights like for U16, U14, those ages. Is that something that you would suggest as well? Just use the body weight and not to get too
I
much
think I
weight
think it kind of depends. I mean, everything's like load progression ultimately. So if you're, and I see that like with kids that enter a new program and then they've never lifted in their lives and all of a sudden we're throwing weight on the bar. I think that's a lot. And then there's maybe not any like, you can get away with something body weight, but then when you add a lot of weight and you're doing it with bad form, it becomes an issue. And so I think it's not necessarily the age and more of like it needs to be progressed really well. So maybe focusing on good movement patterns and making sure that like the kids are doing movements really well before you're adding weight on is more important than even like talking about like how old are we? Are we saying we can start lifting weights at age 13 or whatever? It's more like, are they checking the boxes? Do they look good? Are they strong enough to do this without body weight, without or with in just body weight without compensation? And then you add the weight on. So I think it's more of like, that's a hard answer because it depends, but yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because we even have like pull-ups, as simple as pull-ups seem. Uh, like most of us do pull-ups with pretty bad technique, and then most of us start adding weight to our pull-ups as you like try to, like get better and better at pull-ups. And you see it even like probably 90% of the World Cup guys are doing pull-ups like with their shoulders like hunched and terrible technique. And then you try to do a pull-up with good technique, and like I can do a pull-up with like 50 pounds hanging on me, but if I do it with good technique, I can like do 5 with my body weight. So I think it's like a tough balance of like, yeah, like wanting to lift hard because you're a motivated skier and you want to get stronger, but also the technique is probably, it's super important for like the longevity of being a skier and training well and not hurting yourself.
Yeah, I think if you can challenge yourself without like with just body weight stuff, and like you see all the time with things like side planks and stuff like that, like if you like nailing down a good side plank without compensations before you're adding in crazy progressions or doing exercises that are too hard, it's like you almost don't need to add the weight because you can make things challenging enough if you're doing it correctly. And then once you're able, like strong enough to hold that, then we start progressing things. That's kind of how I would approach like the junior athlete a little bit, is like really focusing on basic movements, because the thing is ultimately they get away with it when you're younger. Like you can kind of do anything. I was never injured when I was like 13 years old. And then by the time I was 25, I, was hurting my shoulders and things like that in the gym because of like years of lifting, not great. And so I think it is like a really great opportunity to embed good habits. And so we should be focusing on that stuff.
Would you say is it good or bad to be sore after a strength exercise or workout?
I think it's totally fine. I mean, I get sore, particularly when I introduce a new exercise. Like even if I'm going, like I think I'm going easy trying a new exercise, and I'll still get sore most of the time. Um, and like, I mean, if I'm sore, like if I'm doing certain exercises and I end up like really sore in my back, and like I shouldn't have stressed my back, then I like question myself, like did I use good technique? Like is my back sore because I lifted too heavy with bad technique? But if it's like, like you did squats and your like butt got sore, like that's kind of what happens when you do squats, and like then you'll adapt and probably stop getting sore and you'll be able to add more and more weight.
Yeah. And I will say, like, the research says that like soreness does not impact performance negatively. So whether or not like anecdotally that's true, because I feel like you can be so sore. I've seen David after like Mount Marathon, he can't walk. I'm like, well, obviously he couldn't do that the next day from soreness, but in theory, it's not supposed to impact like how you perform the next day. So, I mean, I think it's not a bad thing, but obviously if you're so sore you're like not able to like perform the motion, then it's probably a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing to be a little bit sore.
Yeah.
So,
And if I probably like, if you're sore to the point that you're like limping or compensating, then you just want to be careful. Like if you did squats or something with your legs in the gym that made you sore enough that you're running with a different stride, I'd be cautious to like do that running workout the next morning, because you might compensate and then create like an injury from something else. Like if that occurs, maybe next time lift a little easier, and then if it's that sore, like go road bike or something, so you don't you can like loosen up your legs without hurting them jogging. Kind of like be adaptable and yeah, I wouldn't say you did anything wrong if you're just sore. Like,
Mhm.
if I went into curls right now, like I'd be sore the next day for sure.
We can end with just kind of a fun question. Throughout all of your lifting, is there maybe one or two like lifts that are your favorite or that you prefer to do most of the time, or maybe that you're really good at? I don't know. Anything that comes to mind, and like specifically maybe like the traditional lifts, like a bench press or a deadlift or something like that. Is there one that you might go out of your way just to include because you like it?
Yeah, I would say single leg RDLs would be
That's a
one
good
for
one.
me. And if we're going upper body, it's just in terms of like bang for your buck with skiing, like pull-ups, but do them well. So I think there's nothing better than being able to, like body weight pull-ups. But if they're hard, start with a band. Like I used to not be able to do any, and I started using bands, and I was awesome at them. But also, it is important to not be doing crazy moves and like swinging your body because you're at risk for hurting your shoulder. So good quality pull-ups, I think, translate super well to how well you can double pull. And then single leg RDLs, I think, are great for anytime you're on one leg, you're doing really good glute med activation, trying to stabilize the pelvis. And so being able to like really control single leg activity, I think it translates so well to skate skiing. So
Yeah, I would agree with Jess on pull-ups through high school and like probably the first 2 years of college. I pretty much did pull-ups and dips. Like I didn't really do a ton else for strength. Um, and then I did specific strength on snow, like single sticking and then steep uphill double pulling, like where I was barely like, getting up the hill kind of thing. Um, and then probably my like favorite or like most rewarding type strength is like I get kind of bored of doing like 15-minute core sessions. So like in the gym, if I can do core like hanging from a bar, like knee raises or TRX straps, like I'd rather in like 6 minutes just fry my core, like with really challenging core stuff than like 15 or 20 minutes sitting on a mat, which I like doing that with friends and stuff. But like at the end of a gym session, if I can just like blow out my core, like I don't know, I find that rewarding, and I kind of walk out of there feeling like I like cooked myself. And then you always, I think the core recovers pretty fast, so it's not like I won't be able to ski or run well tomorrow's workout.
Mhm.
I like doing that.
yeah,
since
oh sorry.
pull-ups, that's your favorite exercise. So how many pull-ups could you do like in your peak on your peak performance?
Like 30.
I could do like 24 or something.
Wow.
Yeah, Jess is very good.
Those are some good numbers. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really good.
But the other exercise I'm adding in is like side plank variations.
Mm.
Like I think we think of them as like core, but it's not just your core. I mean, your hips are part of your core, but like it is a ton of hip strength when you're doing that. So like side planks with like you can do cable pulls or leg lifts or rotation or like, and if you extend onto one arm, you're getting really good rotator cuff stability. So super good for the shoulder. But I have to add a third in because two's not enough. So that's my third exercise I'm putting in there.
That's a good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's like classic Jess. If I ask for like a strength plan, it's like I'm gonna be in the gym forever. So like I always have to like cut 5 exercises out, and so it's like a challenge for
It's
her.
hard.
She like likes so many, but
Yeah.
yeah. Um, yeah, and then I did mention specific strength, and I like in the bullet points from the first like email that you guys sent out, it asked about specific strength, and like I grew up doing it like once or twice a week, just like in the middle of a distance workout. Like if we did like a few pickups, we'd also do like 5 times like 45 seconds single sticking, like on a gradual hill, stuff like that. Which I don't think it hurts, and you're probably not gonna like overtrain by doing it, or like
Mhm.
if
Is
yeah.
there a specific time of year you'd start implementing that more, or is it kind of just throughout the training season, would you say?
um I'd say throughout the whole year, maybe like less in the race season. I didn't really do it, but then I'd also say like if you're like early on in roller skiing, like maybe in May, I wouldn't do it just to be cautious of my elbows and not like it's like
Yeah.
single sticking like can like irritate your elbows if you're already needing to be cautious of that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like don't start it on week 1 of roller skiing. But
Yeah.
even forced double pull, if you're talking like specific strength, like I used to do a lot of, I would go out and just do my normal classic skiing route and just make myself double pull the whole thing. And I think that translated, like that is specific strength, and it made me good at double pulling because you just would look at a hill that you wouldn't double pull and you're like, well, that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So that kind of thing I think is really good too.
And that was a
yeah.
big evolution in our training was like it used to be like, oh, the coach says to do like an hour double pull today. And I used to be like, so I'm going to go double pull the flat roller ski route. But then as we got older, like a double pull workout meant you just kept double pulling the normal terrain, unless like you needed an active recovery day. So like, but I don't know, the majority of the summer, I double pulled the same routes that like I had to V1 or stride when I was doing a skater classic session. I would just double pull it and like force myself to double pull the steep hills.
It's a cool opportunity too because roller skis are faster. So it does translate. I think on snow, it's harder to like double pull the same hills. And so you just got to take advantage of it. But I guess that means you're doing more than 2 strength sessions a week, but not in the gym.
They're
So.
different.
Yeah.
A good idea that you do it as a part of your distance workouts. You're just not separating it as a specific workout. It's part of the distance and over distance.
Yeah. And like, I don't know, like if you're out there and you're kind of bored, it's like nice to be like, okay, at 20 minutes in, I'm going to do 3 times 45 seconds single sticking, and then I'm going to ski for 20 more minutes, and then I'm going to do 3 times 45 seconds single sticking. So it kind of breaks up the workout, so it's not just a monotonous like 90-minute double pull. I kind of like that. Like I think of it as like almost like stations or sort of like key elements to keep the workout exciting.
I'm looking at our notes here. The only other thing we wrote on here is make sure, I guess, piece of advice like in the gym, like I think it is really easy to compare yourself to others. I mean, like I've seen David lift a lot less than other people in the gym, but because he's a confident person. But I feel like it's easy to feel like, oh, I'm just gonna leave that on the bar. Like if they're lifting it, I'll do it. But the thing is, like you're ultimately gonna end up compensating to try to lift someone else's weight, and it's way better to try and do movements unless you're in like a power phase and you're focused on like speed and quick movements. Like slower is usually harder. So going slow, focusing on the movement and like doing it correctly, lifting less weight is going to make you way stronger than trying to like just lift whatever's on the bar and try to keep up with everyone else. So that's a piece of advice there.
Yeah. And if this is the conclusion, I don't know if it is. If you have more questions, doesn't need to be.
Keep asking.
But like strength is often in every junior's training plan, like once or twice a week, and it's really easy. Like it's such a fun environment generally to just be like hanging out with your friends in the gym, but like between your lifts, have those fun conversations. But when it's time to like do your set, just like it's 30 seconds, focus on the set and like lift well and like lift hard because you'll get a lot of benefit from it. So don't like have fun in there, but don't get distracted the entire time. Like actually try to make some gains in the gym, and then you'll see it translate to snow, and it feels good and it's rewarding. Yeah.
It's also the best way to build bones in that age. So I have to throw that out there. I guess heavy lifting is directly how you stress your bones. And so in terms of talking about like bone mineral density and building bones, like running isn't great. It's like too much of a repetitive motion. And so you need like higher stimulus to bones. And so there is a benefit to being in the gym that's beyond just training and performance. Like it's super good for tendons and bones and longevity. So
thank you both again, as always, for joining us. And thank you for those watching the recording later. Hope you learned some stuff. Yeah, thanks. Have a good one. We'll see you in the next one. See ya.
Thanks.